Good evening. I'm Lawrence Belfer, and I have the honor of serving as chair of the 92nd Street Y. I'm delighted to welcome all of you to our very special program this evening, celebrating the Tony Award-winning musical Dear Evan Hansen's 3 years on Broadway. Let's give it up. Yeah. Now, I feel like I'm going to be introducing you to a small galaxy, because I'm going to be touching on 3 stars. The first is our moderator tonight, Katie Rosman. Katie is a features reporter at the New York Times, where she covers media, social media, and celebrity, and the ways in which they intersect and collide. Our special guests this evening are Andrew Barth Feldman and Stacey Mindich. Andrew made his Broadway debut at the age of 16 as Evan Hansen. Before joining the cast of Dear Evan Hansen, he won the 2018 Roger Rees Award and National High School Musical Theater Award for Best Actor. Stacey Mindich is the lead producer of Dear Evan Hansen and has shepherded the musical on its journey from workshops to a Tony Award-winning run on Broadway, as well as its first national tour across the United States, and a new production that just launched in London at the Noel Coward Theatre. A 2-time Tony Award winner, Stacey has produced more than 20 shows on and off Broadway, including The Bridges of Madison County, Hedwig and the Angry Inch, Lucky Guy, and The Lion. Now, for over 30 years, I've had a social motto from Benjamin Franklin: be civil to all, sociable with many, familiar to few. And on a personal level, I want you to know how privileged I feel to have Stacey Mindich and her family among the familiar few to me and my family. And on a personal level, we have seen Dear Evan Hansen from a ringside seat go from an idea to see it open in Washington, D.C., off Broadway, on Broadway, and just a few weeks ago, Carolyn, my wife, and I were in London for the opening with Stacey and Eric. And suffice it to say, it's got great music, it's got a compelling story, it's got wonderful acting. But I think the thing that struck me the most over the last 3+ years are the conversations that I've heard around the show. Conversations related to family, the role of technology in our society, and the awareness and the need to deal with mental health in a little bit more serious fashion. And in this age of divisiveness and anxiety, I really find it heartening to have a show like Dear Evan Hansen that is a pro-social force for good, and in many ways is more than just a show. So without further ado, please join me in giving a warm 92nd Street Y welcome to Katie Rosman, Andrew Barth Feldman, and Stacey Mindich.
Thank you all. Thank you all so much for being here. We're really excited. And before we start, I wanted to just share a little anecdote that I don't think I've ever told Stacey before, which is we're here to reflect on and celebrate the 3rd anniversary of the Broadway debut of this really groundbreaking show. And I actually was there on opening night. I wasn't invited. I was there writing a story about Cindy Adams, who was covering the red carpet and the show to write an item about it for the New York Post. And I was following her around, and she was sort of looking for what she called names, and she was, grumbling and sort of complaining and kvetching a little, which is part of her very considerable charm. And she sees Benj Pasek and Justin Paul and sort of bounds over to them and starts interviewing them. And she's asking, what did you do all day? Were you nervous? How did you deal with your nerves? And they gave very delightful answers, saying that they spent time with their family to calm their nerves, and they texted with each other. And they were appropriate and sweet remarks that maybe didn't have the flash and dash that this tabloid columnist wanted. And she's tapping her pen on the pad, and she said, and I'm going to read it to make sure I don't mince her words. She said, "For Christ's sake, I hope you write better than you talk." So, which I thought they spoke very well, but they certainly write beautifully. And they have been very lucky to have two people like you to bring their words to life as we have. So thank you for coming here and talking to us about how you have done so. So before we go to the beginning of the play, I'd love to hear about how you two met. If you could each tell us your remembrance. I've read a little bit about it, but I think it's really special and would love you to share with everybody.
Did we meet the night of the Jimmies?
We did not.
Okay.
No.
I don't think we did. No, because it was the after party was probably the craziest 10 minutes
and
ever.
I don't go to after parties.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then that's why. Because it was Tara Rubin, the casting director of the show, came over and everyone was coming over and I was like, oh, okay. And
So why don't you tell us what the Jimmies are for those who don't know?
So the Jimmies are the National High School Musical Theater Awards. They're the most amazing thing. And even if you're not a high school student or know a high school student that's considering it, you should just look it up and watch the videos because they're so much fun to see these incredible high schoolers just giving everything they have to whatever role they're portraying. It's really wonderful. So I was lucky enough to be nominated for it and
to win.
Yeah, I was getting there. And to win, which was so crazy and still so crazy to me that people say to me sometimes oh, that's like people talk about that it's where I came from, and that's still bonkers to me that I won the Jimmy Award because that was such a huge deal for me. But then so the after party after was I was just cradling this glass award and all these people were coming, and I remember at one point I was walking around with a plate of mac and cheese just and somebody's dad, I don't even know who it was, comes up to me and goes, "Stop looking so surprised." And I was like, okay. So I guess then we met.
Well, let me tell the good part. Dear Evan Hansen did this fantastic thing, which was sponsor the Jimmy Awards that year. I think it was the first year we did it. We've done it since. And it really put us in high schools across the country, which was very exciting. And then, as sponsors, I got a very good seat at the Jimmys. And I was sitting in a row of all the wonderful people who work on our show. And you came out and you opened your mouth and you sang "I Love Betsy," which was fate because I love Jason Robert Brown, who composed that song. And so you immediately had my attention, but 20 seconds into it, I turned to my general manager on the show, Wendy Orshan, and I said, that is our next Evan Hansen. And I texted Tara Rubin, who was our casting director, who was sitting a few rows in front of me and was one of the judges of the Jimmys, and I said, "Get that boy into the casting room next week before anybody else does." And so she saw you a few times before we were going to scare you, because when you walk into a casting room and Pasek Paul Levinson and Alex Lackamore are sitting in there, it's a little scary.
Yes, it is.
So we actually met that day.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I thought. Because I had a meeting with Tara a couple weeks earlier, and that was not supposed to be about Evan. But then I got the email about Evan, and I auditioned actually for the male swing for Evan, Jared, and Connor. Which, if you know the show, this is not a Connor. This is not. And so she said it was just going to be about college and talking to me about what I should do and next steps. And then I got the email and I go to her office and I was like, okay, can we talk about this also, please? Because it was so, it's still bananas to me to see that email in my photos because I screenshotted it a million times.
So let's go back even further to the very beginning. And Stacey, you've done such an incredible thing with this show because this was not a producer taking on a fully baked piece of art and helping it get to the stage. I mean, you were a real creative partner throughout the whole process, as far as I understand. And from what I have read, this sort of started over food, as many of the best conversations do, over lunch with Justin and Benj. Can you tell us a bit about that lunch and sort of what grabbed you, and what about their idea, which I think it really was, well, you'll tell us at that stage, sort of captivated you to the point that here we are now?
Well, I've always loved young voices. I mean, I love, there's nothing I love more than reading a 20-something novelist and seeing that person kind of grow into fame. And when I started producing, I was really looking for something of my own, not just to be a part of other shows, or shows that were movies, or shows that were revivals, but something original. And I had a lot of people now take credit for introducing me to Pasek and Paul, but there is a conductor, a music director, Ted Sperling, who was trying to get me interested in the not-for-profit he was working at, and he made me what I call, and this is dating me, but a date tape. Of, like 20 songs from new composers. And there was a song from Pasek and Paul's song cycle called Edges on there, called A Boy with Dreams, which reminded me of my middle son. And I was absolutely, gobsmacked by the song, and I just wanted to meet them. So I wrote to their website, which, this was a few years ago now, and it wasn't a very sophisticated website, and I sent a $28 check for a demo of more of their music. Wow. Still waiting. But eventually, through some connections, we met through Lincoln Center Theater, where I actually commissioned a piece they did first called Dogfight through Lincoln Center Theater. And we had lunch a couple of times, but when they had gotten Dogfight off the ground, I knew that I couldn't let go of them. I was just obsessed with their sound and their energy, and I just had this gut feeling they could do something special, and maybe I could kind of hold on to their coattails. So we did go to lunch, and I'm several years older than they are, and so I came with a little list of ideas, and at the moment I thought, gee, maybe they could turn Custom of the Country by Edith Wharton into a musical. And if you sit with them for 2 minutes, they're filled with, even today, 10 years later, filled with energy and life and bouncing off the walls and very young and hip. And they weren't going to do a musical of Edith Wharton's Custom of the Country. And so I, kind of crumpled up the list, kept it in my pocketbook, and just looked at them and said, what do you really want to do? What is it? And they told me this story that isn't Dear Evan Hansen, but had the seeds of Dear Evan Hansen in it, which is a true story that happened in Benj's high school in Philadelphia when he was a senior, where a child in the class passed away. I think it was a drug overdose. And Benj maintains that every single kid in the class wrote their college essay about this person, whether they knew him or not, and it was their need to connect to a tragedy. And it haunted Benj when he went to college. He met Justin at the University of Michigan, and they talked about it a lot. And it was that time when tragedies were first being displayed on Facebook in a way that everybody could post, oh, I knew him, or I remember the time. And they really wanted to write a show about modern grieving and about, it starting with one boy. And they told me this whole thing, and it was actually fascinating because at that time, I had young children, and I knew people in their 30s and 40s, but I didn't know anybody in their 20s at that point in my life. And the way they were thinking and talking was utterly compelling to me. And the idea sounded insane. Who would ever want to go see anything like that? And of course, I said, well, let's do it. And it got shaped from there by a lot of wonderful, talented people.
Wow, and you introduced them to the man who wrote the book for it. I mean, you really took a germ and turned it into something incredible and beautiful. And so, Andrew, it's pretty amazing. I asked Molly how many times you've played Evan Hansen, and you have played him approximately 250 times.
Really?
Yeah, which is really.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't have that number. People ask me, and I don't know how to
now
answer.
you can
That's
say
great.
a New York Times reporter told me 250 times, as told by a publicist. So tell us, I mean, if you can, off the top of your head, like when you go out there every night or every day, like what's one moment that you love, whether it's a line or a song, and it doesn't have to be your very favorite, but just what's one moment in the show that you really love doing?
I am a big fan of comedy and performing comedy, and it's not what people take away from the show, but there is a lot of comedy in the show, and I think that's what really keeps it moving and keeps you interested. And so I think the first like really comedic moment that I don't have to like worry about at all in the show is the internal scene of waving through a window with Zoe, who is now played by Gabrielle Karuba, who's my best friend on the planet. And it's just the perfect introduction to, okay, so this is who this kid is. And there are a lot of those moments in the first couple minutes of the show, but the laughs that come and the feeling that the audience is on Evan's side from that moment on is really powerful. And then to go into the rest of waving is the scariest thing in the entire world. But yeah, I think that's probably one of them, but there are so many.
And tell us, you first experienced the play from the audience, right? Will you tell us about going to see it?
Yeah. Oh my God. I saw it. I think it was about a week after it opened, and I had so I'd heard the song "Waving." I'd heard "Waving Through a Window" because they released like a demo, and not a demo, but it was the first recording of it. It was the first song they released, and I was obsessed, and I was playing it over and over and over again. And I remember saying to a friend of mine, it was Mark Tuminelli, who runs Broadway Workshop in New York City, I said, I hope this show flops so that I can sing this song at every audition ever. And he said, you want it to succeed so that you can be in it. Because he saw it. Yeah, I know. I owe him like a lot of money.
So do I.
Yeah. And so I was like, okay, I think I need to see the show, because then people kept saying like, oh, you'd be great for that. And so finally I saw it, and I think it articulated something that I was not yet able to articulate, because it was 2017, which was not that long ago, but I was 14, 15, and I was just starting to feel all these things and experience that anxiety of being a teenager. And I remember I got in the car after, and I saw it with my brother, who's here, and I got in the car, and my mom was like, how was it? And I was like, I don't want to talk about it. I was really, really moved, and I never felt anything like that. And I think I found recently, actually, I posted on Facebook, I haven't cried that hard since Han Solo died. That's what I said. And yeah, I think the show and the book and the music and Ben's performance impacted me in such a visceral way, and I think opened up this journey of being able to articulate that anxiety and that feeling, and that's the journey that I went on to be able to play this role every night.
Did you ever think that possibly you would be the second Evan Hansen, that you would replace Ben Platt?
When I was like 30, I thought maybe I could play the role. I didn't think it would be when I was this young, that following in the footsteps of Ben and Taylor, who gave the most incredible performance, and Noah, who I didn't get to see, but everyone that I saw loved him, and all these incredible, incredible men, that still daunts me every night.
Well, I had the good fortune and pleasure of seeing you in the show on Wednesday night, which was actually the 3rd anniversary, with my son, who went with me. And you've really made the character your own. I mean, to me, you're very believable. I mean, we were just in it. And how'd you how'd you do that? Was there anything that you actually said, I'm going to try to do X, Y, and Z, or how'd you do it?
Yeah, it took a while. I don't think I could say that I was as different as I am now at the beginning of my run. I think it was the permission that I didn't have to be different. That permission from Michael Greif, our director, and all the team saying, like, there's no ego here. Like, you don't have to be different for the sake of saying that you're different, because that's not going to get you anywhere. Like, there are things that you saw in other Evans that you loved. Use it, take it. And there are things that are, like, now part of the fabric of the show that Ben came up with, or that Taylor came up with, or that I came up with. And they're now part of the show's life and DNA, and that's really incredible. I think so much of it, though, was forgetting what their performances were. And I think in an effort to be as true to myself as I possibly could, I saw as many Evans as I could. So I made sure to see as many Michael Lee Brown shows as I did Taylor Trench shows. And if there were other understudies on, I'd try to go see them. That sort of thing to make sure. My goal isn't to be, it's not to be Ben, it's not to be the opposite of Ben, it's just to be whatever Evan is to me and whatever that is in my body. And I think it took me a really long time to find that. But I mean, it's been such a wonderful journey to be able to get to know Evan better. He's my favorite person. So.
Well, and what you're saying is just be yourself, which is what Evan tells himself at the beginning of the show.
That's what the play is about.
So what don't you like about Evan? Is there anything you don't like about him?
I don't like what he does. I don't, but the fact is, at least for me, and I know there are so many debates about this, and we can debate this till doomsday, it comes from a place of empathy, and it comes from a place of wanting so badly to help them and having such an uncomfortableness with seeing someone be sad. And that's where it all spews from, is that he is such a deeply empathetic person. So of course he's not perfect, but that's like saying your best friend, what do you not like about them?
Right.
Or it's like, well, there's things that aren't great because he's such a three-dimensional
Yeah, he
human
really
being.
is.
But I love him.
Yeah. So Stacey, when the show was, working its way through and coming to Broadway, Obama was president, right as it was in previews, and the many people.
We were in tech rehearsal when President Trump was elected.
Yeah, so really, because I think it opened December 4th, so it was less than a month. So you thought that you were, I'm sure you weren't necessarily thinking I'm doing this against the backdrop of the first woman president, but the world turned out to be very different, I think, than a lot of people, particularly in our city and our world thought. So how is there a way that that the climate, the political climate, this is a play about lying in many ways, which has taken on a lot of resonance in politics and in the national discussion. Is it received different by audiences because of this moment in time than perhaps it would have been?
I suspect probably, but I think it's really a show about honesty, and it's a show about the truth really coming out and being authentic, and how ultimately that's where you need to land. And so we do sort of stay away from the political because the show is so much about mental health and authenticity. But I think if anything, it has sort of helped bring out the themes of the show. And when people say, well, the show is based on a lie, Stephen Levinson, our book writer, has really the most wonderful answer, which is, no, it's actually based on the truth. It's about seeking the truth. And, we do think of it as a very classic coming-of-age story, not unlike so many of the great classic coming-of-age novels. A lie is told by a boy, a girl, a young person, and they go on a journey and they learn how to accept the truth.
And I think, Andrew, what you say is true. It does seem like it's his just desire to help people that he gets caught up in something that turns into more than he could have imagined.
I think you can draw a straight line to, as time goes on, his intentions are less and less pure because he wants so badly to cling to what he's found. But I think what you're saying, it's about honesty and it's about forgiveness. And I think with all these politicians that we're seeing, you want so badly for there to be like, I want you to feel what you did and see what you did. What you're watching in Words Fail and what you're watching in So Big, So Small is remorse. Yeah. You're watching genuine remorse, and that's something that we don't see in the news, where all the lying that we see from politicians, we don't see the remorse, and that's Evan's punishment. That's the hardest thing a person can feel.
Well,
And we've all done something that we wish we hadn't and that we want to be forgiven for.
Exactly. It's like when any parent, has to punish a kid who's gone through something, and you think, well, what you've just gone through was the punishment in itself.
Yeah, it's true. And it's interesting. It is, of course, a coming-of-age story, but I think part of what is amazing about it is that there are a lot of points of emotional entry for different people, and I have always I've seen it 3 times, and I have felt so much for the mothers in the piece, and the idea that one is going to school and is working and is trying to better herself for the better of her kid, and another mom has stayed home and has tried to devote herself and all of her time to her kid, and it's a little bit like, oh, we can't get it right, but I really it's like, I know all politics is local, but it's a lot about that struggle for parents too, I felt like. I mean, was that at all, does that resonate with either of you?
Very much so. I mean, the opening song, Anybody Have a Map, came to the show late. We didn't have that when we were in Washington, D.C. at Second Stage. And when I heard it for the first time, actually in my office at the piano, I was, dumbfounded. I just felt like these 2 boys had been sitting at my breakfast table. I remember when I would put my kids on the bus to Horace Mann, and I would go run around the reservoir just to get over all the mistakes I made that morning over breakfast. And so, I think, we always say if you're a parent or if you're a child, this show is for you. But it really does, I think, represent the eternal plight to communicate better with your kids, or for your kids to want to try to communicate with you if they come out of their rooms.
Yeah. Or set their phones down. All right, so Andrew, you're a high school student right now. Is the story realistic to you in terms of not the specific story, but just the social dynamics, and particularly how social media really has a central role in the lives of everybody and in their relationship dynamics?
Yes. I think this show, more than any other show, movie, television, anything, does the best job of showing what it's like for a teenager to be on social media, because it's very rare that we see Evan on his phone or a kid on their phone, because that's not what it feels like. It doesn't feel like there's this world and then there's the phone. It feels like the world is whatever's going on in here. And our show, literally the backdrop of the show is social media, or these beautiful Peter Negrini projections, and so that's what it feels like. It doesn't feel like we're typing on a computer and having this conversation. It feels like we're having the conversation in real life. Obviously, things can get misconstrued much more easily, and that's, happens. But yeah, absolutely. It's that blinking light of in your brain. That's what social media is, of why isn't my life as good as these people's lives? And that's what waving through a window is. It's the I want song of our generation of social media users, of that loneliness. Yeah. And it's incredible. That's
a really, amazing way to put it, that they're not separate things, that the screen is sort of a screen onto your whole life. And so your run is going to come to an end next month.
Yeah.
How do you feel about it?
I'm sad. But it's not. It's a year is the right amount of time to do this. That's the max, I think. But to say goodbye to Evan is not something I like to think about, and to say goodbye to all these amazing friends that I've made over the last year. Of course, well, I'll see
You
them.
can come back. You're young.
I
enough.
very well might. But yeah, it's even if it's for now, to say goodbye is not something that I like to think about. But I think I will be ready in terms of I'm ready to eat pizza again.
And will you rejoin your class and go back to school?
That sort of still has yet to be seen. It's very likely that I will have enough credits to graduate so that I can take some time after I'm done to focus on my company. I run a company's Nefrock Productions, a theater company that I've run for the last 6 years that raises money for Next for Autism. So we're planning on doing 3 shows next year, which I'm really excited about, and you'll all hear more about soon. So there's that, and then I will be going to college next fall, and where has yet to be seen, because that is not information that I have. Yeah, so, I'm looking forward to being a normal person for a little bit, and then we'll see what else.
So we were talking in the green room, you've got strict dietary restrictions right now.
Yeah.
And why is it? Just for energy or?
Sort of all the things. So I can't have dairy because it's very acidic, and so it creates a lot of phlegm when singing, and I have accidentally had some dairy and felt the effects of it. But every Sunday night I eat a slice of cheesecake, so we're all okay. And then I can't have things like red meat because it takes longer to digest, and that's energy that I could be using to run around and sing for you all. And so, yeah, there's a lot of dietary restrictions. So essentially I eat the same thing every day. I have sushi for lunch and a roast beef and avocado sandwich for dinner every day.
Wow. Will you have cheesecake after this?
I will. Okay. I couldn't before.
We don't
but
want
I
to
will.
interfere.
It's waiting for me in the car.
Okay,
for
good.
real.
We don't want to interfere with that. And I think the show has also really started a large conversation about mental health. Did you anticipate that?
We didn't anticipate it in this to this extent, but I do remember, doing our very first large reading where we invited people for the first time other than small groups of theater people. And the show at that point was a little heavier than it even is now. We pared a lot of that down. And I remember thinking that there were people I knew who were coming who had things in their families that were slightly similar to what happens in the show, and I started worrying about them. And so I called the Mount Sinai Adolescent Health Center and asked if we could just use them as a resource in the one-page playbill that we kind of made on my office to give out at this reading. And I don't know if anyone called, but I knew in my gut that it was the right thing to do and that we had to do more. And so as we realized we were going to wind up, running in Washington, D.C. and then off Broadway and Broadway, we really did our due diligence and we researched, who could be good partners for us. And we were very, very proud of 5 mental health not-for-profits in the U.S. that are on our website. That we rely on for a variety of different things. The JED Foundation has literally supplied us with a resident psychiatrist, Dr. Victor Schwartz, an extraordinary man who has trained all of our casts. As a matter of fact, he's coming this Wednesday to give a brush up for all the new cast members in how to deal with teenagers who write to us, who write directly to the actors and bare their souls, and sometimes it's actually very scary. We get direct messages, very real things like, "Dear Evan, I think I'm going to let go of the tree. What can you tell me?" And the first thing that our actors are taught by this doctor is, don't answer, get it to me. And so our press team, our company manager, I have gotten these things, and we, email, text Victor Schwartz in the middle of the night. He gets to these kids. But we also, we have used the music to get the message out about, the simple lyrics of our song, you're not alone, or you have been found, or things like that. And it has stirred conversations that are beyond our wildest dreams, and it's extraordinary, and it's also an extraordinary responsibility. And so we, when we were opening in London, we went early and we researched, who should we partner with there. When we had a limited run in Toronto, we found mental health organizations there. And so it is a part of our narrative now, for better or for worse. I think it is really for better. There really isn't a week that goes by that we don't have some contact with our mental health partners.
Wow. Well, and I would think that in Great Britain, in London, the conversation, if it isn't different, it's possibly the conversation is had differently. It seems culturally more reticent to speak.
Well, it's been extraordinary. People have been telling us, from audience members to people in the press, that our timing is great. Because as Will and Kate and Meghan and Harry start talking more and more openly and, work with these organizations themselves, I think that there's a feeling that the British population is opening up about their own issues.
Oh, that's a really great point. Did the show for London, was it changed in any ways? I mean, did you adapt it at all for a British audience?
Well, first we had a dialect coach spend a great deal of time with the cast perfecting their American accents, because it is an American story and we're keeping it that way. Funny enough, there are just language things that are different, like, the joke about, well, I don't know if you all know it, but the joke about the camp counselor. No one laughed because I guess people don't really go to camp in England the way they do here. And the joke about the no one's gone to the liquor cabinet since Rosh Hashanah 1997. No one laughed at Rosh Hashanah. But they laugh at Hanukkah. So we, it's just like, that's why we're all there. We listen to the show every night, we watch it every night, and then we, subtly change things. But
I
nothing
wonder why
major.
Hanukkah is more funny than Rosh Hashanah.
I don't know if they know what Rosh Hashanah is.
Wow.
There aren't a lot of Jews in London.
No, there aren't.
It was
We
very
should
telling.
populate.
Yeah.
It was very telling.
It would connect that they wouldn't know about camp either then. So, well, and you should be so proud of yourself, Stacey. I don't know you well, but I'm just amazed by what you've done. It's really important. It's really great. It's really great. And Andrew, you too. It's just amazing, and that you're leaving to go work on your company that has 3 shows. I'm like, oh my God, it's making me feel like, what are you doing, Katie? So, it's just remarkable. One day you will understand what a big deal it is to have made your Broadway debut at 16, or at all, frankly. But so I thought maybe some of you had some questions for us or for them that if you want to ask them, I might repeat them to make sure everybody can hear it. Who wants to ask that first question? Yes, young man?
For Andrew, do you ever use your life experiences to help form an understanding of Evan?
So the question asked is if Andrew has used his life experiences to help form the character, his portrayal.
Yeah, absolutely. I think something that I had the great advantage of is that I didn't have to remember what high school is like. And I didn't have to remember what that anxiety of being a teenager felt like. It was all very, very real and tangible to me. So absolutely. And I think I was on every side of the equation. I was as ambitious as Alana. I was at times as mean as Jared, but also as bullied as Evan. I was in everyone's shoes, as I think all teenagers are at some point. And So absolutely, and I think that was so crucial too in having been in all those positions, because that's the empathy that Evan feels. And I like to think that I had that empathy, and I think that I've been able to foster it so much just from being in the polo, and so yeah, absolutely. Just and then so many things beyond that, of course. But having those teenage resources so readily available to me was extremely helpful.
Yes.
Which character from Dear Evan Hansen do you most resonate with, do you think?
Yeah, definitely, Evan. I think I'm just now beginning my own journey of discovering how alike to him I really am. But I think his empathy, his passion for wanting to help and put a Band-Aid on every single wound that exists on the planet, and just being so overwhelmed with it all, I think that's very, very real to me.
Yes.
Hi, this is a question for Stacey. I have a daughter who's a sophomore student at Emerson College. She's majoring in theater and arts management, and she's actually producing Fun Home at the school this evening. I think if she were here, she'd ask a question of you of what piece of advice would you give. She's very interested in the producing side of the business, and I can see that it just brings the best out of her. What's that one piece of advice that you would perhaps give her as a current 19-year-old looking to do this in the future?
Well, I didn't start out as a young person as a producer. This was my second career. And when young people come to me, I feel in a way that it's not authentic for me to give them advice. But I also really believe that producers on Broadway, because I don't know what they're like in TV or film, do a little bit of everything. And if I had started out as a young person, I would have tried to work in a lot of different ways in theater. I would have tried to work for a general manager's office and in advertising, and because as the producer of the show, you're really the leader of all of these departments, and to really understand what they do, I think to get a foundation in a lot of different areas of theater is very, very important.
Thank you.
Congratulations on Fun Home.
Yes, sir.
Hi. It's not a question as much as a statement. I just want to say, as somebody who's on the autistic spectrum, I suffer from social anxieties and a lot of the similar things that Evan goes through. And I just want to say the play you guys have written, it really is it's really moving. And I try to pass it on and encourage people at work that I work at Family Court, and I see a lot of the parents, and I try to give them the teenagers to see.
That's wonderful.
Thank
I'm
you.
sure
Thank
that's
you
very
so
appreciated.
much.
Yes, back there.
My name's Lynn, and this is Grayson, Olivia, and Dave. And we want to say that we've seen Dear Evan Hansen twice. We saw it this summer, and we were just in awe of the show. And we saw it again last month. And we're sorry to hear that you're leaving. My husband hasn't seen it yet.
You still got some time. Good.
We're all vocalists, and we're in awe of your harmonies. And for forever, support Evans. We listen to it every day.
Yeah.
And the question I have is, when did you start singing, and how long did it take for the four of you to come together and make it so beautiful? How many hours did you have?
Yeah, we never rehearsed together.
Wow.
Yeah, it was so. The first part of the question, I've been singing for as long as I can remember. I started doing theater when I was 8 years old. I was in a really horrible production of Annie. I was Mr. Bundles, the laundryman. If you not familiar with Annie, so yeah, and then with the four Evans, it was actually a super crazy thing. I was the only Evan that had a show to do that night, so I recorded it on I think it was a day. I recorded it on a day when I didn't have a show, separate from the other three guys. The three guys came in later that week. I don't even think Sam was cast yet. I didn't know his name until I met him, which was crazy.
He was cast. We were keeping it from you.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Now that's the answer. But so we never rehearsed together. It was just Alex Lacamoire being this absolutely brilliant I mean, literally genius, MacArthur genius person, that he wrote, he was kind of like, okay, I don't know if we're gonna do this, but we're gonna try it. And he would just like fiddle a song on piano. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So it was very isolated. It was very easy to do. I don't know how the experience was for the other three guys, but my part was super easy. So, but oh my God, that day when we were filming the video, that was the first time that I heard the track, and hearing Stephen Anthony, the tour Evan, just soar on those bees. And have you guys seen the video? It's really cool. You should check it out. It's really, really, really cool and special. And so yeah, that was the most special thing. And to be in that room, it just worked out so weirdly well that Stephen Anthony, he was about to start, so he happened to be in New York. Sam was rehearsing in New York, and Robert also just was on like vacation in New York. So it just worked out so crazy well, and was the most fun to do. It was so cool. And that's like all people talk to me about now, and I love it so much. It was the most fun thing.
Yes, all the way in back.
Hey, Matt.
My name's Matt. Nice to see you, Andrew. I'm a huge fan.
I love you, Matt.
A few other people, Emily and Katie.
Hi, guys. It's all my friends.
To see you out here talking about all these wonderful things. I just had a quick question, and I don't want to take up too much more of your time. What's the next big role for you, and what is your dream role? Also, actually, it's a two-parter. What are some odd talents that you have that may have helped you with this part? That's all I have to say.
Those are great questions, and I'm going to answer them both seriously. So, thanks, Matt. I love Matt, everyone. So, the first part of the question was the next big role for me. I don't know. Yeah, also a great question. This was it, guys.
Good answer.
This was the top of the list. So I think really I'd love to originate a role in a musical one day, or really just to do anything. I think my passion lies in storytelling and how that can be used in activism and that sort of thing. So any stories I get to tell that I think I'm passionate about and mean something, that's my dream role. That's what I want to do. Besides this was like top of the list. Check. And then oh wait, what was the other question? What was it? Hidden talents. I can stutter really well, and that was very useful. I don't know. I mean, they're not really hidden anymore, I guess. I couldn't cry before. I couldn't cry, but they cast me anyway. I didn't cry in the audition. I never cried in rehearsal. I barely cried for the first 3 months of my run, and that was something that I had to learn how to do, and I still don't think I can really cry like on command. I think I just learned how to access how much the story means to me and to all the people that are there that night. If you asked me to cry right now, I probably couldn't do it. But it's just about connecting with the story every night. So that is not a hidden talent, and it's still not a hidden talent.
Yes, ma'am.
What do you think you're going to look to study in college?
Great question. So, music composition. I'm a writer, and then also, sort of my ideal thing that I would love to do is study theater, not acting necessarily, but all facets of theater: directing, writing, dramaturgy, improv, anything I can get my hands on to tell a story. That's really what I want to do. Thank you.
Yes, right there.
You mentioned at the top about this being the 3-year anniversary, and I'm curious what your thoughts on where you think Evan is 3 years after the ending of the play.
Well, he's in college. He's in college, assuming he goes to college, which I think he does, and he's working on himself. I think that's where we leave off at the end of the show. He's in therapy. He's taking his meds. He is not, doing his best every day not to punish himself for the way he feels.
It's a good
Sequel.
question.
Sequel?
Yeah. Stacey, where do you think Evan is 3 years later?
Well, I'm actually thinking about Heidi, who gets her paralegal certificate and gets, has a more regular life and fosters a more genuine relationship with her son, and maybe finds someone in her life besides her son. And we have to think about the people whose age we're closer to. So I always think about Heidi.
Who knows what Jared's doing? I don't know.
I'd like to know about Jared too. Yes.
Do you have any advice for like young boys in school that have like a hard time doing theater?
Yeah, are you saying like you get made fun of for doing theater? Those guys suck. I think what's gonna happen is if you're in theater and you're doing theater, okay. First of all, you're already facing adversity and you're already overcoming it by doing theater in the first place. So that'll make you a more well-rounded person. That's number one. Number two is that theater creates empathy and will give you a feeling that those other people are not going to have in a couple of years. And you're going to have a lot more understanding of who people are and why they do the things that they do. And I think that's the most important that a person your age or my age can learn. So those people are going to be really stupid in a few years, and you're going to be really smart is exactly what I'm saying.
That is for sure. That is for sure. Yes.
Question for Andrew. How much of a role did Ben and or Taylor have in helping you get on board and transition on?
Yeah, they were amazing, and I still talk to them regularly. They're like two of the nicest people you'll ever meet in your entire life. But something that can be said for them, which is so brilliant and such a testament to what a personal experience playing this role is that they never looked to guide me toward how to play the role, because they knew what a personal experience it was for them and what a personal experience it was going to be for me. What they did was guide me more towards how I could handle it mentally, and this goes for pretty much every Evan. Ben Ross, who played it on tour. I've talked to Stephen Anthony, who's doing it on tour now. They've guided me in terms of the people that I would meet and come into contact with, and also how to handle it mentally every day, and maybe some of the things that they do to get out of it. But I did ask them for advice in terms of like the crying and what you would do if you couldn't cry, or like, all these crazy things that went through my head, like how much time do I have to pee, Ben Platt, like things like that. And they answered always, because they knew they told me what they would have wanted to hear, and I owe so much to them. They're the best.
When do you get to use the restroom during the play?
Requiem, that's it.
Oh, God.
I pee, it's during Requiem. I have enough time. That was the question I had for Ben Platt. And then intermission, and then I sneak it in at the very beginning of Good For You. Sometimes I am late. It has not happened. It happened twice. I was in trouble. But yeah, and I didn't do it at the beginning because I was so scared. And I was like, you know what? I gotta pee.
That's great. Those are the things we don't think about at all. So let's take two more questions. And yes.
I was just wondering, as a parent of a teenage boy at the moment, was there any concern with, it's such a rigorous role and a performance schedule, casting someone so young? I'm just thinking of not getting enough sleep and growing and eating and all those things. Is that why you did the 1 year?
So every Evan has done a year so far, or less. So I think what we all sort of found is that I could do it. And at the beginning, it came from everyone in this team being so sensitive to that, and Stacey caring so much about my well-being and wanting to invest in me as a person as opposed to an Evan. And Liz Kaplan, the show's vocal consultant, I worked with her weekly. I still work with her weekly. Every Evan has. I started on a 5-show schedule as opposed to a 6-show schedule, the typical Evan schedule. And we actually hit a crossroads sort of recently when I went back to school, because we bumped it up to 6 over the summer. And when we went back to school, you had wanted me to do 5 because it's like doing a part-time job, and it is. And I was like, I really want to do 6. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but I think we should try. And it's been going well. But there were even keys that we lowered in the beginning that we've now moved back up. So it was about easing me in. But I have only called out because of vocal fatigue once in my first week. And that's from everyone on this team being so sensitive to everything that is going on with me. And I've grown, I've slept, I've eaten, I've done all those things. So no, it's not. It's definitely not a traditional teenage life, but I did all the things that the internet said I couldn't do. So.
All right. Yes, right there. Last question.
So this information is coming from Alex Bonillo, so I don't know how much of this is true.
Probably not.
Apparently, the character Zoe finishes her whole bowl of cereal in So I want to know if Gabrielle does the same thing.
I don't think so. I think okay, if you look at Gabby in real life, if she turned, you wouldn't be able to see her anymore. She is the skinniest person. I don't think she could down a whole bowl of cereal, to be honest. So no, I don't think so. But she and I, besides that, have so many little moments that I won't tell you about because it'll ruin the thing. But little moments where we just sort of check in with each other every night, and we'll just squeeze each other's hand a little bit, or her back's turned at one point and she'll wink at me or something, and just little moments where we're we're not Evan, we're not Zoe, we're us, and everything's okay. And so she's the best person on the planet.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you both for sharing the magic of Evan Hansen here with us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.